under an hour from now, the Prime Minister is going to be arriving there already. Big crowds have gathered of Indian Americans and NRIs, and there are already chants of Modi, Modi that can be heard. Now, today is the second day of the Prime Minister's state visit in the US. Already big announcements have been made and some mega deals have been talked about, which will work in boosting ties between the two countries, and these range from areas of defense cooperation to space. NDTV's Maha Siddiqui is there, and she's been bringing us coverage of all the developments. So really, first we're going to have the Prime Minister and President Joe Biden hold the bilateral talks. There will be a brief, media address and questions also from the media, one each by an Indian journalist and American journalist. Prime Minister will be addressing a joint sitting of the Congress, and then there will be a lavish state dinner. Let's just listen in to Maha.
It's the most significant and a big day in the state visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the United States. And both sides will be sitting down for a bilateral meeting today. Ahead of that, let me quickly show you around the White House the preparations that have been put in place. As you can see, the executive wing adorns the flags of India and the United States. This entire stretch, like we even see in India when there is a visiting dignitary from any country, that their flags adorn the stretch in India of the Kartavya Path here. We are seeing that outside the White House as well, the Indian flag dotting this entire stretch. Now, what are we expecting today? A bilateral meeting between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi to last for 1 hour from 11 a.m. to 12 noon American time. Before that, at 10 a.m., there will be a reception for the Prime Minister. We are expecting a sizable number of people to have been invited for that, because remember, so many people cannot be accommodated for the state dinner. So there, in the White House lawns, about 4,000 to 5,000 people is what we are expecting who have been invited for the welcome. After which the two leaders will step inside the Oval Office and have their one-on-one and a delegation level meeting, as the pattern of the bilaterals is, and certain crucial issues that will later turn into announcements, whether it's in the defense sector or the tech sector, space sector, will be made. We are expecting at least 2 big ticket announcements in defense on GE and HAL joint production of jet engines, as well as on the purchase of drones. In the tech sector, we are expecting something around Micron on semiconductors, their manufacturing unit to come up in India. Apart from that, after which, once the events at the White House are over here, there are expected to be, before that, possibly a joint statement, and then we can also look forward to a press conference as well. At least that's on the agenda at the moment, after which the Prime Minister will move from here for the address to the joint Congress. With camera person AJ Joseph, this is Maha Siddiqui in Washington DC for NDTV.
All right, and with that, time for us to slip into a short break, but do remember to stay tuned in to our continuous coverage of the Prime Minister's state visit to the US.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on, with accuracy and integrity, because at NDTV, trust is everything.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV,
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity, because at NDTV, trust is everything.
The NDTV News Network
That informs
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
because the only side we're on is yours.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can
Welcome back. Well, let's now go across to NDTV's Maha, who joins us from the lawns of the White House, where a big crowd of Indians, Indian Americans, NRIs have gathered as the Prime Minister is going to arrive here within an hour from now for a key day in his state visit, and where he'll hold bilateral talks with President Joe Biden. But first, Maha, over to you and tell us about this crowd that's been gathered there for over an hour now, and tell us what's happening.
In fact, more than over an hour. One gentleman here in the crowd, he said that he came in here at 4 a.m. for an event that starts at 10 a.m. But, you know, there's security obviously around why. Credentials checked and then come in, and the size is also, the crowd is also quite sizable. We were told that about 4,000 to 5,000 people is what is being expected in the morning for the reception. So you can see that these the crowds that have come have been split in the South Lawns in 4 patches. So one is 2 of them are on the either side of the riser that has been put up for the media, and then right across, just next to the White House, I'd request my camera person to just pan and show it to you, Gargi. That's the White House. that you can see, and on the right and the left hand side again two sets of people there as well. Meanwhile, in the center we can see a stage, a podium has been set up, and there is a live performance that's going on. A violin player is doing a live performance. I'm not sure, Gargi, if you're able to see her, but yeah, so there's music, there is excitement among the crowd that have gathered here, and this is quite a beautiful setting, but the weather seems to be playing a spoil sport since yesterday. Yesterday, when the Prime Minister arrived at the Joint Base Andrews, there was a lot of rain there, Gargi, and it was actually getting very difficult for the camera persons to even film much of that. Today, again, the skies are overcast. The weather prediction says that there will be rains today as well. The entire day yesterday it was raining, sometimes just a drizzle, sometimes heavy rain, and now today it's at the moment it's just a drizzle, but there is prediction that by the second half of the day the rains could pick up. So despite the drizzle, people have gathered. I mean, had it been raining more, then this reception would have been difficult, because this is an open space, and there is no space house to accommodate so many numbers. Even for that matter of fact, the state dinner that will be held this evening in the White House, that state dinner the numbers are limited there between 250 to 400. That's the standard practice. But even for those numbers, there is no room in this White House that is big enough to accommodate so many people for a proper sit-down dinner. And therefore, even that will be held in the lawns here. But for that, tents will be put up, and then the dignitaries will be taken to the tents after they meet with the Prime Minister. That's how the procedure is, that the guest comes in, he's made to meet with all the people who have gathered for the dinner, and then the state dinner starts. State dinner is part of a state visit. It's considered very special. The menu, which we already know, includes a lot of vegetarian. This is because of Prime Minister Modi's food choices. Also, when there is a guest, then the menu is made in such a way that there are cuisines from the country that the guest is coming from that are primarily included in the menu. So, of course, we'll be seeing that as well. Usually, there is a celebrity guest as well, a celebrity chef as well. So, all those are small little elements that are included that make the state dinner a little more interesting. They make it, apart from the formality of the talks that one will see in the morning, the state dinner is meant to give it a little more, a space for the leaders to be a little more comfortable and easy with each other. Even yesterday, there was a private dinner here in the White House itself. That private dinner had only 4 people, President Biden, his NSA Jake Sullivan, Prime Minister Modi, and India's NSA Ajit Doval. And Jill Biden, along with Joe Biden, welcomed the Prime Minister, after which the 4 went in for a dinner. Now, as far as today's engagements are concerned, he will again be meeting President Biden, and we are being told, Gargi, that even tomorrow in the morning there could be an event where there will be a third meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. So a couple of sources that I was speaking to, they say that this shows the extent of bonhomie and warmth, because the Prime Minister is here in Washington DC for 3 days, and on all the 3 days the President is making sure that he engages with him, meets him. So yesterday for the private dinner, today there are 2 events. First the reception bilateral meeting, and then in the evening state dinner, and tomorrow again in the early hours there could be some engagement where both the dignitaries will come together. So, Gargi, my camera person is panning, and you can just take a look at the number of people who've gathered. As I said, 4 to 5,000 is the count that we were given of the number of people who are going to come here. People holding the Indian tricolor and the American flag in their hand, waving it. The stretch outside the White House, pretty much like what we see on the Kartavya Path in India. When there is a guest visiting, their flags are put up. Similarly, India's flag along with the American flag dots the entire stretch of the White House. On the executive building, which is the office of the Vice President, Kamala Harris, just next to the White House. And if my camera person will just pan, that's the building, that side, and the front of that building has a big Indian and American flag also displayed, showing that the dignitary from India is visiting America. So yes, an air of excitement here, despite the weather, trying to play spoilsport in the situation. Most people braving out this slightly cold, wet weather, though Washington DC has been turn, and it's cold, windy and wet, but the event's going on as per plans.
All right, Maha, they're bringing us all the excitement there on the lawns of the White House ahead of the Prime Minister's arrival there. And as he gets down to business, he'll hold the bilateral with President Joe Biden. And then, the rest of the day where he'll address the joint sitting of the Congress. And there will be that state dinner here itself, as Maha was telling us, and a lot of interest in who all are invited, what that guest list is. Also interesting that Maha just told us that perhaps tomorrow as well, on the third day of the Prime Minister's presence there in Washington, D.C., there could be another meeting with President Joe Biden. Well, we'll slip into a short break and return with more. Stay with us.
दुनिया में कुछ लोग
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
because the only side we're on is yours.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity, because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time. The NDTV News Network
That informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs
inspires
and
Welcome back. Let's bring you these scenes from outside the White House just before the Prime Minister will arrive there, and it seems there's some sort of choir and there's singing underway. Remember, huge crowds have gathered there ahead of Prime Minister Modi arriving for the bilateral. Let's just listen in. You're there. So a choir there singing of young men singing on the steps there of the White House, and I think it's the sound system that's really the problem here. But before this, we saw a young girl playing the violin, and crowds have been gathered there. Right now, it's the morning hours there in Washington, D.C. It's around 9:30 a.m. And some of the crowds that have gathered there, an elderly gentleman even told our reporter Maha that he's been there since 4 in the morning. So huge crowds on the lawns there as the Prime Minister arrives, and it's also drizzling, so the weather playing spoil sport there. You can see everybody's umbrellas are out. The Prime Minister will arrive in around half an hour from now at the White House. He'll hold the bilateral with President Joe Biden, after which they will address the media. They will also take 2 questions from the media, a press conference of sorts, one by an Indian journalist, another by an American journalist. Then the Prime Minister will address a joint sitting of the Congress, a very rare honor because it's the second time that he will be addressing the joint sitting of the Congress. So very few have ever had this honor. Then there will also be the state dinner that will be taking place again on these lawns. We believe it will be between 250 to 400 people who will be there for the dinner, but it does seem like a rainy day there in Washington, D.C. Now already several deals have been announced, and in the areas of defense cooperation and space expeditions to visa rules. In fact, the visa rules is what will be very interesting for a lot of NRIs, and this will make it easier for Indians who work in the United States for them to renew their H-1B visas, and a small number of Indian and other foreign workers will be able to renew their visas without having to return to their country. So that will be a very, very welcome change for those who work, for a lot of the Indians who work in the US. Also, new consulates is also in the offing. There will be new American consulates in Bengaluru and Ahmedabad, we're told, and another Indian consulate in Seattle. So that is also something that is going to be announced. So several key deals, mega deals. We've been bringing you that through the day and leaving you with these young men singing there. And remember to continue watching our coverage of the Prime Minister's visit in the US.
Brought to you by. Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
That informs
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
Good evening and welcome. We continue to bring you our non-stop coverage of this all-important visit of the Prime Minister to the United States. In about half an hour from now, he arrives at the White House, where he'll be meeting US President Joe Biden, one among several visits which are planned. He's already met him once, and we are now told that there may be a third meeting as well at some stage tomorrow. But these are large crowds which have gathered on the lawns of the White House. They've been assembled over there for the last couple of hours, in fact, just to catch a glimpse of Narendra Modi as he comes to the White House. There's a lot of excitement over here. There's a lot of music as well. Quite a remarkable sight. But it's been a fairly landmark deal which has actually taken place, and we'll tell you why. India and the US on the verge or have concluded 6 key deals, details of which we'll find out about in an official statement later this evening. Remember, there will be a press conference as well, which the Prime Minister will address. Limited questions, one to Biden or one to Modi. But in terms of the deals, an $824 million semiconductor investment in India by the US company Micron, a jet engine deal for General Electric engines to be manufactured in India. There'll be an Indian astronaut on the International Space Station, perhaps in 2024. New consulates in each other's country. So Bengaluru and Ahmedabad for the US and Seattle for India. H-1B visa renewal, that process will be much more easy now for Indians who are already there on an H-1B. You'll be able to get that visa renewed in the US itself. You won't have to come back to India. And finally, what is not yet announced but widely expected to be announced, a deal up to $3.1 billion for 31-odd MQ-9B reconnaissance drone from the American company General Atomics, which would, revolutionize India's ability and our armed forces' ability to conduct reconnaissance missions in our across the China frontier and indeed out into the oceans as well. But first, let's quickly take a look at some of the important and key deals. What we need to look at first is semiconductors and the significance of the deal which has been announced today, and what exactly it means, because our digital economy, particularly manufacturing in the digital sector, is going to be completely transformed once India becomes a power hub of semiconductor manufacture. They're everywhere, in our phones, in our cars, in our laptops, in every sensor, in pretty much all modern electronic items, from the most basic workplace appliance to the most advanced ballistic missile submarines. We take semiconductors for granted, which we shouldn't, because they are extremely hard to get and harder still to manufacture, which is why India's tryst with world-class semiconductor manufacture has to begin now, at scale, for our future economic growth, and that's one key deal that the Prime Minister is looking at during this visit to the United States.
Back in the old days, computers were huge, made up of tubes and dials. They were fragile, they used huge amounts of electricity. Semiconductor chips replaced these tubes. Machines became smaller, more efficient, sleeker, way more powerful. The industries that rely most on semiconductors are computing, microprocessors and graphic processing units in your computer, for example, telecommunications, the 5G device on your phone and your phone's display, household appliances, the temperature control in your air conditioner, for example, banking, digital accounting, cloud platforms, security, the CCTV camera in your home, healthcare, pacemakers and monitors in hospitals and elsewhere, and transportation, engine control systems for cars, and the GPS maps that you use, also the manufacturing sector.
Now here is the problem for us in India. Our demand is huge and growing, but we lag in the semiconductor fabrication or FAB manufacture. We have a weak semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem. China had been a top exporter of semiconductors to India, which is problematic since a denial regime or a slowdown in such exports can be weaponized, which is why India wants to make semiconductors for India and the world right here in our country.
Statistics till 2021 showed that China was the top exporter of semiconductors to India, followed by Hong Kong and then Vietnam. To get over the dependence on China and a handful of East Asian nations, in December 2021, the government cleared a whopping $10 billion package to boost the semiconductor industry. India needs a host of superconductor chips of different types to make India a global hub for electronics manufacturing. That manufacturing at the moment is dominated by just a handful of companies around the world. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company Limited, Intel, Qualcomm, Broadcom, and finally Micron.
In fact, it's Micron and another American company, Applied Materials, that the Prime Minister has invited to boost semiconductor manufacturing in India during his visit to the United States.
Micron is a global leader in memory and storage, and we are a supplier to for memory and storage in all end markets, from data centers to smartphones to PCs, and today really fueling the AI engine as well. So we are excited about the opportunities that exist for the future of memory and storage. And again, congratulations to Prime Minister Modi on his excellent visit.
Micron's investment in India comes at a time when India's demand is projected to explode. According to the India Electronics and Semiconductor Association, the India market will touch $64 billion by 2026. That's 3 times the 2019 size of $22.7 billion. In addition to Micron, Vedanta and Foxconn have also signed an MOU with the Gujarat government to invest 1.5 lakh crore rupees to set up a semiconductor and display manufacturing plant in India. But the deal is yet to progress. India, it seems, is keen to step up ties with the US on semiconductors, signing an agreement to establish semiconductor supply chains under the framework of the Indo-US Commercial Dialogue. The future of manufacturing for India's digital economy depends closely on how this works out. Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
Well, joining us now, Ambassador Arun Singh and Ambassador VB Soni. Thank you both very much for being with us. Ambassador Singh, in your opinion, is this the most substantive visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the United States in our history?
So I think there have been substantive visits by Indian Prime Ministers which have been path-breaking. I think Prime Minister Vajpayee's visit way back in 2001, or even in 2000, after President Clinton's visit, after the sanctions that had been imposed on India, was a very important visit. And then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit for the Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement was again a very important path-breaking visit, because that opened up higher-level technology cooperation, which has brought us to this point. But what's happening now is, of course, the Indian Prime Minister is on a state visit, only the third time that an Indian leader has gone to US on a state visit. He will be addressing the joint session of Congress for the second time, and the first Indian leader and fifth globally to get that opportunity. But at this time, with this new initiative on critical and emerging technologies, in the framework which we are also seeing the semiconductor announcement that he spoke about. So with this initiative in critical and emerging technologies, I think is the next big thing that has happened after the Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement, enabling the two countries to move to even higher levels of technology cooperation. And you've seen, for example, the announcement related to jet engine technology, transfer of technology and production in India. Now, that was something that the US had never allowed earlier for India. So another signal that they're ready to do cooperation at another level. So if you package all that, then I would certainly say that building on the foundation laid earlier, the visit this time is path-breaking and taking the cooperation to yet another level.
Ambassador Soni, now that we have this level of cooperation between India and the United States economically, from a military standpoint, other areas as well, what's the future looking like?
I think, first of all, let me say that this has been a defining moment in our relationship, because in the past we have had some big major breakthroughs and various initiatives that have been taken. But I think present moment, things are changing geopolitically, and China's emergence and the possible threat from them, and more importantly, I think the supply chain disruption. Now, that is an issue which concerns not just India or US, but the entire world. So there has to be an alternative to that. And for that alternative power to come, I think India stands a very good chance with its background, with its fourth largest trained manpower, technological advancement in various fields. But we were lacking in certain areas in terms of getting the state-of-the-art technology, which is homegrown. So to my mind, I think a totally new vista will open up. There are no opportunities which are going to come up, because our manufacturing sector will get a boost with this import of technology and other assistance. And of course, along with that will come a huge amount of investment. And this augurs very well for the entire level of relationship. So to my mind, this is an excellent visit. And it's not a one-off. To my mind, it's just a beginning of many more initiatives that will be coming up in the near future. And for that, I think the initiative by the US government and, of course, our Prime Minister has to be commended. They are the ones who have taken it forward, but it has to carry on the work, because I think this is exciting. Sure. Opportunities are going to come up. All
right. Well, you know, Ambassador Singh did refer to the jet engine technology deal. General Electric has announced it today, the Memorandum of Understanding. Why is this important? Well, jet engine tech is widely considered the holy grail of aviation technology. Very few countries have it and everyone wants it, which is why the US decision to transfer key jet engine technology manufactured by General Electric to India is a landmark deal. Here's a deep dive into why manufacturing these engines in India will be transformational.
Jet engine technology, widely considered the holy grail of civil and military aviation. This is the General Electric GE F414 engine, a cutting-edge jet engine that powers the F-A-18 Hornet, the US Navy's go-to fighter. This engine may now be produced by General Electric in India. In a multi-billion-dollar deal with Hindustan Aeronautics, with reports suggesting that America is willing to transfer key technology worth up to 80% of the value of the deal. It would power the LCA Mark II, an advanced variant of the Made in India Tejas fighter that you see here. The United States has never allowed the transfer of this level of technology to anyone. State-of-the-art jet engines include components which are deeply intellectual property rights protected, with manufacturing processes that are top secret. The technology that India may get includes coating and machining of single crystal turbine blades. What exactly are we talking about? Consider this. Manufacturing components of jet engine turbines has always been a massive engineering challenge through the history of aviation. Jet turbines need to retain their shape, their strength and their efficiency at temperatures up to 2000 degrees centigrade. Metal alloys used in older jet engines using conventional manufacturing techniques failed at the highest temperatures. They lost their thermal efficiency, which is why a handful of companies began to develop what they call single crystal turbine airfoils. Through profound chemical engineering of superalloys, single crystal turbine airfoils are able to achieve 3 times more engine life protection against corrosion resistance. Far, far lower overall weight. It's a lighter engine. A higher melting point temperature. This is absolutely critical. And massive engine life, much more than usual, up to 25,000 hours before an overhaul takes place. For India, the deal will mean that GE will open shop in India in partnership with HAL at a new plant to introduce the manufacturing processes required to build not just single crystal turbine blades, but also other key components, including laser drilling for combustion, machining of powder metallurgy, and the manufacture of compression discs and blades. The GE 414 IN6 engine, when it's built in India, will power not just India's indigenous Tejas Mark II fighter, but also the futuristic AMCA, or Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, a stealth fighter. For the Indian Air Force, this will mean reliable and long-lasting jet engines. Russian engines in the past frequently needed an overhaul at a few hundred hours. Now you have engines which can be overhauled after several thousand hours. Engines which are lighter, more powerful, much more fuel efficient, and with the potential to be upgraded for future use. The benefits of all of this will be transformational for the Indian Armed Forces. Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
All right, let's just go quickly across to some live images which are coming in from the outside the White House right now. This is just a couple of minutes before Prime Minister Modi arrives over there. Let's just take a look at what's happening.
You are? Okay. You talk to your neck and you're out? Can you move this way some? Okay, great. Yeah, no, it's okay. All right, cool, thank you.
Tracking these pictures, have it up on the screens. But joining me now, Mr. R. Madhavan, the former CMD, the Chairman and Managing Director of HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics, to talk about this huge jet engine deal. Sir, in simple terms, what does it mean for us?
It means that we have a jet engine which can be used across board for all varieties of LCA and also for such acquisitions like the Navy's acquisition for onboard aircrafts. So this will be a common engine, as well as this also means that we can be a part of the global chain of suppliers for GE.
And sir, is the technology transfer as profound as you expected it to be?
Pardon?
Is the technology transfer as profound as you expected it to be?
Yeah, it will be profound because we will get new technologies. We learn about how to manufacture parts for which are of new generation materials, as well as the main part of the thing is, of course, the foundry part, as well as the what we call it surface treatments of the metallic parts, which can so that they can take up higher temperatures, are corrosion resistant as well as wear resistant. So these are the new technologies that we are looking at.
All right. And sir, can this technology be used in the future for our stealth fighter, the AMCA?
Yeah, what I expect personally is that from these technologies, we will be able to develop, that is the DRDO will be able to develop an engine in the 110 to 125 kilonewton range, which they are planning to. So this will definitely help us in acquiring those technologies, and I hope that GE will stand along with us to develop those engines in-house here. So finally, what we need, that India needs, is an aircraft engine of their own.
All right, so wonderful to hear all of this from you. It is a landmark deal. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you so much indeed. Let's just go back now to all of these images of the White House coming in. Remember, Prime Minister Modi will be there at about 7:30. You've got that ceremonial reception all set to take place. It's a very, very busy day for Prime Minister Modi, and I'm just going to run through some of the other key aspects of what is expected today. Remember, there'll be a press conference as well later on today. But in terms of what we can expect going forward, there's going to be at 7:30 p.m. this evening the White House arrival ceremony. Then between 8:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., Prime Minister Modi and the US President Joe Biden will have a bilateral meeting. So that's the business end over there. Lots of aspects of the relationship will be looked at. They'll be sitting across a table from each other. And then at about 10 p.m. India Standard Time, 10 to 10:30 p.m., there's expected to be a joint statement of the outcome of the visit and an interaction with the media. So there will be questions which will be asked, perhaps just one question, one from the Indian side, one from the American side, not a freewheeling press conference by any means, but we will get an answer from a Prime Minister to the question which is asked. Later on at 12:15 a.m. India Standard Time to 2:40 a.m. India Standard Time, and you can watch it all live over here on NDTV, Prime Minister Modi will be making his address to the joint sitting of the US Congress. It is, in a sense, one of the most important aspects. It is without a doubt one of the most important aspects of this particular visit, since it is the second time that Prime Minister Modi has been accorded this very rare honor of addressing the joint session of the US Congress, not once but on two occasions. And at 4 a.m. India Standard Time, which will be the evening for him in Washington, D.C., there'll be a state dinner where he meets President Joe Biden once again at the White House. Tomorrow is also going to be a fairly busy day. There's going to be an India-US high-tech handshake event at the White House tomorrow. There'll be a State Department luncheon. There'll be business meetings. There'll be an event at the Kennedy Center, a community event. So, and then finally the Prime Minister departs. He is not coming back to India immediately. He's going to Cairo, Egypt. But for now, let's just listen to what's taking place.
brought to you by
The world comes together at Sharda University.
दुनिया में कुछ लोग कहते हैं और कुछ लोग करते हैं.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV,
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV,
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs
inspires
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV,
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV,
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
Welcome to our special show on Prime Minister Modi's state visit to the United in the south lawn of the White House. What you're witnessing right now on your television screens is called the State Arrival Ceremony. You can see the bands are playing. There is and they are all waiting for the dignitaries to step out of the White House, and then there will be a guard of after which both dignitaries are expected to make some short statements. Since there is a large gathering that has been invited, so about 4,000 to 5,000 people, there is a possibility that the Prime Minister might step out and meet some of those people. However, all of these, if the weather holds, at the moment it's not raining, if that holds, then the Prime Minister will meet. So security vans are pulling in. We can see, in fact, the ceremony there starting, but in a short while from now, we'll be able to see both Prime Minister Modi and President Biden.
we are able to.
All right, we're going to connect with Maha in just a short moment from now, facing some trouble with her connection. Why exactly is this very, very significant and important, not just for India, for the United States as well? We're going to talk about all the aspects. We're going to go back to Maha in just a short moment, but we also have the Voice of America White House Bureau Chief, Patsy, with us. Thank you very much for joining us. As far as the United States is concerned, Patsy, why is this relationship being treated as extremely significant? I can understand the Indian perspective, we've been reporting about it, but what's the view in the United States?
Well, from the Biden administration's point of view, there are at least two reasons why they are treating this visit as a very important visit. I mean, even the term official state visit is distinctive. Usually prime ministers are given official visits, not state visits, which are reserved for, presidents and monarchs as heads of state. But for Prime Minister Modi, the term is official state visit. And there are at least two reasons. Number one is to support India's defense capabilities as a counterbalance in the region against China, and number two, to wean off India from Russian weaponry. And as we can see, this is all geopolitical reasons. There's geopolitical interest for the U.S. to ensure that India and the United States have a firm and deepened relationship. But obviously, from the Indian point of view as well, the U.S. has been the country that has been very instrumental in terms of India's transformation, both in terms of defense, both in terms of emerging and critical technologies. Just a few weeks ago, there was this big ISET initiative on critical and emerging technologies that India is very keen to be part of. The U.S. also wants to make sure that India is strong there in order to diversify supply chain away from China. So those are at least two big geopolitical strategy reasons why India and U.S. relationships are very important for the White House.
Yes, Patsy, I'm sure there may be a lot of concerns that have been raised. You must have heard about how China has responded. We've also seen extremely strong words being used by Mr. Biden for the Chinese, calling their leader a dictator. Obviously, that is one country which is very keenly watching and closely watching this development. Beyond the use of that word, dictator, how exactly does the United States look at its association with China vis-a-vis this meeting?
Well, clearly it is a geopolitical balancing act, right? I mean, for the U.S., it's clear from the Biden administration, it's clear that that China presents the biggest threat geopolitically in the region as well as in the world. And, this whole idea of being able to manage relationship with Beijing is something that the administration says over and over is key to the success of their foreign policy. And this is something that obviously many countries in the world want, because they do not want to see conflict. They do not want to see this rivalry between the U.S. and China veer off into conflict. But again, sometimes it's a bit of a head scratcher, particularly what President Biden said in terms of referencing President Xi Jinping as a dictator a day after his Secretary of State Antony Blinken was visiting Beijing to provide guardrail to establish communications and to improve relations between the two countries. So this is a little bit of a curiosity, and a lot of people have wondered why President Biden said that. Was it intentional, or was it more of an off-the-cuff remarks? The White House has not walked it back. They sort of doubled down and said that it should be no surprise that there are differences between the U.S. and China in terms of autocracies versus democracies. Now, it will be very interesting to see whether that framework of autocracies versus democracies is something that will be underlined or highlighted by the Biden administration in terms of Prime Minister Modi's visit. I mean, we know already that the whole idea of these relations between two largest democracies has been underlined by Indian officials during their visit. But we also know that there's a lot of issues about human rights that American activists are concerned about, but the White House had said that's not going to be the focus of this visit. They're sort of willing to overlook that because of those more important strategic interests that we have discussed earlier.
All right, do stay on with us, Patsy. I believe my colleague is now back with us. Maha, it's over to you.
Many thanks, Sanket. The colourful welcome ceremony is on over here, the state welcome ceremony. You can see those people behind me. But let me go across to former US Ambassador to India, Ambassador Timothy Romer, who is also joining us here. Sir, we are here right in the White House. The ceremony is on. In a short while, we'll be able to see Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. But all eyes are really on the big takeaways, because they will speak volumes about where this relationship is going. What do you believe will be the most significant sector of engagement? Will it be defense, technology, or people-to-people issues? For instance, we understand that there could be some relaxation in H-1B. Ambassador Timothy Romer, are you able to hear me, sir? All right, we'll just try to figure this out, whether Ambassador Romer is able to hear us. All right, we'll try and fix that line with Ambassador Timothy Romer. He's here with us on the show, but we need to fix that line so that he's able to hear us. But for the moment, what you can see is that the state welcome ceremony is taking place. The dignitaries are, the senior officials are all here. There is a band. There will be a 19-gun salute. Prime Minister Modi has well now to a large applause from the people, largely from the Indian community who are here for the reception. All right, Prime Minister Modi has arrived at the White House. In fact, in a short while from now, the function will get underway. This is the reception. It's slotted for an hour, where we can also expect Prime Minister Modi and President Biden to make some short statements. The weather at the moment is holding, so there is no drizzling as well that is happening. So it is quite likely that the Prime Minister may just step out a little bit from the stage and meet a few people who are around now. Both the dignitaries have reached the stage, and we'll be able to, in fact, even hear them shortly. In a short while from now, the Prime Minister dressed in a white kurta pajama with a sky blue jacket. President Biden there dressed in a formal suit with a tie. Both the dignitaries on the stage, and in minutes from now, I suppose the first event that will be the 19-gun salute. This is part of the state reception or the state visit. You can see the state here you can hear the gunshots there, the 19-gun salute. You'll be able to see the white plumes that Patsy, who's joining us here. Patsy, we can see both the dignitaries on the stage, the ceremony underway, a 19-gun salute has happened. But what are the big takeaways from the American side, Patsy, if you can help us understand that they are looking at? From the Indian side, defense, tech partnership, the H-1B visa issue, all these issues are big. What is America looking at this? How is America looking at this visit in terms of takeaways?
No, those are the big deliverables that you have just mentioned. In terms of tech and defense, there's this agreement by the General Electric where that American company will joint produce engines for Indian jets. There is the whole drone purchase. Of course, this will be used to surveil the border between India and China as well as Pakistan. So these are really, really big deliverables coming out as a function of ISET, and also in effort of supporting Indian production of weapons. Again, to wean India off Russian weaponry, this is something very important. I think the US understands that India, Prime Minister Modi's government has been reluctant to criticize Russia in terms of its invasion on Ukraine. And so this is something that I think the US side will not be pushing too much, but obviously the whole issue of supporting Ukraine from India, not just India, but also the global South, will be discussed. And in fact, in just a few days, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who was just in India a couple of weeks ago, will be again meeting with his Indian counterparts as well as counterparts from Brazil, India, China, and Turkey, you know, the so-called BRICS countries plus Turkey, the global South, in order to shore up more support for Ukraine. So that's definitely something that the Biden administration wants to lean on the Modi government in order to be able to broaden support for Ukraine. But you know, other than those geopolitical issues that we've been discussing, I think you can hear and you can hear the report from your colleague there, who's on the other side of the White House. I'm on the north lawn of the White House. Your colleagues on the south lawn, where all the action is happening. And let me just describe to you what the situation was like here at the White House this morning. I have never seen so many foreign press before. I think the Prime Minister brought something like 60 or more people, foreign journalists, foreign press with him. So definitely a big audience.
All right, Patsy,
of course, the Indian American diaspora.
As well.
You can hear
Ambassador
their
Timothy
noise,
Roma, John Chambers, and Umesh Sachdev. But let's listen into what President Biden is saying now.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States.
Welcome, Mr. Prime Minister. Welcome back to the White House. I've long believed that the relationship between the United States and India is will be one of the defining relationships of the 21st century. Two proud nations whose love of freedom secured our independence, bound by the same words in our Constitution. First three words: we the people. The enduring ties and shared values between our people and the shared responsibility as global leaders to tackle the great issues of our time together.
स्वागत है प्रधानमंत्री जी आपका, पुनः आपका लौटने के लिए। मैंने हमेशा विश्वास किया है कि संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका और भारत के मध्य यह रिश्ता 21वीं सदी के परिभाषित संबंधों में से एक है। दो गौरवशाली राष्ट्र, हम इन तथ्यों से बंधे हैं और यहाँ हमारी स्वाधीनता के प्रेम से ही हमने अपनी स्वतंत्रता प्राप्त की है। हमारे जो तथ्य हैं वो हमारे संविधान के पहले शब्द यही हैं: हम देश के नागरिक। हमारे लोगों के बीच स्थायी संबंध और साझे मूल्य और वर्तमान के महान मुद्दों से निपटने के लिए वैश्विक नेताओं के रूप में हमारी साझी जिम्मेदारी।
I'm honored to be the first to have you here in 15 years. The United States is honoring and hosting an official visit with the Republic of India. Prime Minister Modi, welcome back to the White House.
मैं सम्मानित हूं कि लगभग 15 वर्षों में पहली बार संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका भारत गणराज्य के लिए एक आधिकारिक राजकीय यात्रा की मेजबानी कर रहा है। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी, व्हाइट हाउस में आपका स्वागत है।
We spent a lot of time together going back to when I was vice president and you had just become prime minister. And since I've become president, we've continued a relationship built on mutual trust, candor, and respect. The challenges and opportunities facing the world in this century require that India and the United States work and lead together, and we are.
बहुत समय एक साथ बिताया है, उस समय से जब मैं उपराष्ट्रपति था और आप अभी प्रधानमंत्री बने थे, और जब से मैं राष्ट्रपति बना हूं, हमेशा इस रिश्ते को जारी रखा है हमने। और जहां हमारा इसमें आपसी विश्वास, स्पष्टवादिता और सम्मान है। इस सदी में जो चुनौतियां और अवसर विश्व के सामने हैं, यह आवश्यक है कि भारत और अमेरिका एक साथ काम करें और नेतृत्व करें, और हम कर रहे हैं।
With your partnership, we've invigorated and elevated the Quad between the United States, India, Australia, and Japan to advance our vision of a free, open, secure, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Decades from now, people will look back and say the Quad bent the arc of history toward global good, as the Prime Minister describes it.
आपकी साझेदारी के साथ हमने एक मुक्त, खुला, सुरक्षित और समृद्ध हिंद प्रशांत की दृष्टि को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका, भारत, ऑस्ट्रेलिया और जापान के मध्य क्वाड को मजबूत और उन्नत किया है। अब से दशकों बाद लोग पीछे मुड़कर देखेंगे और कहेंगे, क्वाड ने इतिहास के वृत्तचाप को वैश्विक हित की ओर मोड़ दिया, जैसा कि प्रधानमंत्री इसका वर्णन करते हैं।
Together, India and the United States are working closely on everything from ending poverty and expanding access to health care, to addressing climate change, to tackling food and energy insecurity stoked by Russia's unprovoked war in Ukraine.
साथ साथ भारत और संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका हर विषय पर मिलकर काम कर रहे हैं, जैसे कि गरीबी को समाप्त करना और स्वास्थ्य देखभाल तक पहुंच का विस्तार, जलवायु संकट को संबोधित करने से लेकर खाद्य और ऊर्जा असुरक्षा से निपटना, जो यूक्रेन पर रूस के कारण युद्ध से प्रभावित हुआ।
We made critical and emerging technologies the pillar of our next generation partnership to ensure that these technologies promote and protect our values, remain open, accessible, and trusted and secure.
हमने महत्वपूर्ण और उभरती प्रौद्योगिकियों को अपनी अपनी पीढ़ी की साझेदारी का एक स्तंभ बनाया है, यह सुनिश्चित करने के लिए कि इन प्रौद्योगिकियों हमारे द्वारा हमारे मूल्यों को बढ़ावा और सुरक्षा मिलेगी और यह खुले, सुलभ, विश्वसनीय और सुरक्षित रहेंगी।
All this matters for America, for India, and for the world. We face an inflection point, one of those moments that only come around every several generations, when so much is changing technologically, politically, socially, and environmentally, that the decisions we make today are going to determine our future for decades to come.
यह सब बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है अमेरिका के लिए, भारत के लिए और सारे विश्व के लिए। हम एक मोड़ का सामना कर रहे हैं, ऐसे क्षण जो हर कई पीढ़ियों में केवल एक बार आते हैं, जहां बहुत कुछ परिवर्तित हो रहा है, तकनीकी रूप से, राजनीतिक रूप से, सामाजिक रूप से और पर्यावरण की दृष्टि से, कि आज हम जो निर्णय लेंगे वह आने वाले दशकों के लिए भविष्य का निर्धारण करेंगे।
And as democracies, we can better tap into the full talent of all of our people and attract investments as true and trusted partners as leading nations, with our greatest export being the power of our example. Equity under the law, freedom of expression, religious pluralism, and diversity of our people. These core principles have endured and evolved even as they have faced challenges throughout each of our nation's histories, and will fuel our strength, depth, and future.
लोकतंत्र के इस रूप में हमने सभी लोगों की पूर्ण प्रतिभा का बेहतर तरीके से लाभ उठाया है और हम उठा सकते हैं और अग्रणी देशों के रूप में सच्चे और विश्वसनीय भागीदारों के रूप में निवेश को आकर्षित कर सकते हैं। हमारा सबसे बड़ा निर्यात हमारे उदाहरण की शक्ति है। कानून के तहत समानता, अभिव्यक्ति की स्वतंत्रता, धार्मिक बहुलवाद, हमारे लोगों की विविधता, ये मूल सिद्धांत दृढ़ हैं और विकसित हुए हैं, यहाँ तक कि जब उन्हें चुनौतियों का सामना करना पड़ा है हमारे प्रत्येक देश के इतिहास में, और दूर भविष्य तक हमारी ताकत को ये ऊर्जा प्रदान करेंगे।
And they form a special bond among our nations, forged by the special bond among our people, based on values that are universal, a duty to family and elders, treating all people with respect and dignity, a premium on education and creativity, self-discipline, hard work, entrepreneurship, faith and service to community, courage and resilience, and tolerance and opportunity for all.
और ये हमारे राष्ट्रों के बीच एक विशेष बंधन बनाते हैं। हमारे लोगों के बीच विशेष बंधन द्वारा निर्मित उन मूल्यों पर आधारित जो सार्वभौमिक हैं, परिवार और बड़ों के प्रति कर्तव्य, सभी लोगों के साथ सम्मान और गरिमा के साथ व्यवहार, शिक्षा और रचनात्मक पर बढ़ोतरी, आत्म अनुशासन, कड़ी मेहनत और उद्यमशीलता, विश्वास और समुदाय के लिए सेवा, साहस और लचीलापन, सहिष्णुता और अवसर।
I've seen this dynamism in my visits to India. I see it in Indian American diaspora. It reflects every part of American life. It remains a bridge between our nations and only grows stronger with each generation. We see it with record numbers of Indian Americans serving in the United States Congress. We see it here at the White House, where proud Americans with Indian heritage serve our country every day, including our Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
में यह गतिशीलता देखी है। मैं इसे भारतीय अमेरिकी प्रवासियों में देखता हूँ, जो अमेरिकी जीवन के हर भाग को दर्शाता है और हमारे राष्ट्रों के बीच एक पुल बना हुआ है जो प्रत्येक पीढ़ी के साथ निरंतर मजबूत होता है। हम इसे संयुक्त राज्य कांग्रेस में बड़ी संख्या में देखते हैं और हम इसे यहाँ व्हाइट हाउस में देखते हैं, जहाँ भारतीय विरासत के साथ गर्वित अमेरिकी हर दिन हमारे देश की सेवा कर रहे हैं और जिनमें उपराष्ट्रपति कमला हैरिस भी शामिल हैं।
The granddaughter, the proud granddaughter of Indian civil servant, daughter of an Indian student, turned American scientist, who came to the United States when she was only 19 years old to pursue her dream of curing cancer. A family like so many of ours in our nation that speaks of the thousand stories of determination, courage, and hope.
एक भारतीय समाज सेविक की पोती, एक भारतीय छात्र जो अमेरिकी वैज्ञानिक बनी, जो 19 साल की उम्र में संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका आई थी कैंसर के इलाज के अपने सपने को साकार करने के लिए, उनकी बेटी। हमारे देशों में बहुत सारे परिवारों में से एक जो हजारों दृढ़ संकल्प, साहस और आशा की कहानियां कहते हैं।
Stories that define the relationship and the limitless possibilities between the United States and India, two great nations, two great friends, two great powers that can define the course of the 21st century. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your partnership, and I'll turn it over to you.
परिभाषित करने वाली कहानियां और संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका और भारत के मध्य असीम संभावनाएं, दो महान राष्ट्र, दो अच्छे मित्र, दो महान शक्तियां, यह 21वीं सदी के पाठ्यक्रम को परिभाषित करेगा। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, आपकी साझेदारी के लिए धन्यवाद। अब मैं आपको सौंपता हूं।
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन, फर्स्ट लेडी डॉक्टर जिल बाइडेन, डिस्टिंग्विश्ड गेस्ट, उमंग और उत्साह से भरे हुए इंडियन अमेरिकन मेरे प्यारे साथियों, आप सबको नमस्कार। सबसे पहले तो मैं राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन के मित्रतापूर्ण स्वागत और दीर्घ दृष्टिपूर्ण संबोधन के लिए उनका हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। थैंक यू प्रेसिडेंट बाइडेन फॉर योर फ्रेंडशिप।
President Biden, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, distinguished guests, friends from the Indian American community filled with energy and excitement, a very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to President Biden for his warm welcome and his far-sighted speech. Thank you, President Biden, for your friendship.
Friends, आज व्हाइट हाउस में शानदार स्वागत समारोह के एक प्रकार से ये भारत के 140 करोड़ देशवासियों का सम्मान है, 140 करोड़ देशवासियों का गौरव है। ये सम्मान अमेरिका में रहने वाले 4 मिलियन से अधिक भारतीय मूल के लोगों का भी सम्मान है। इस सम्मान के लिए मैं राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन और डॉक्टर जिल बाइडेन का उनके प्रति हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
Friends, this grand welcome ceremony at the White House today is an honor and pride for 1.4 billion people of India. This is also an honor for more than 4 million people of Indian origin living in the US. For this honor, I express my heartfelt gratitude to President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden.
Friends, करीब 3 दशक पहले एक साधारण नागरिक के रूप में मैं अमेरिका यात्रा पर आया था और उस समय मैंने व्हाइट हाउस को बाहर से देखा था। प्रधानमंत्री बनने के बाद तो मैं स्वयं तो कई बार यहां पर आया हूं, लेकिन इतनी बड़ी संख्या में इंडियन अमेरिकन समुदाय के लिए व्हाइट हाउस के द्वार आज पहली बार खोले गए हैं।
Friends, about 3 decades ago, I came on a visit to America as a common man. At that time, I had seen the White House from outside. After becoming the Prime Minister, I have come here many times, but today, for the first time, the doors of the White House have been opened for the Indian American community in such large numbers.
भारतीय समुदाय के लोग अपने टैलेंट, कर्मठता और निष्ठा से अमेरिका में भारत की शान बढ़ा रहे हैं। आप सब हमारे संबंधों की असली ताकत है। आज आपको दिए गए सम्मान के लिए मैं राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन और डॉक्टर जिल बाइडेन का हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूं। उनका जितना धन्यवाद करूं उतना कम है।
The people of the Indian community are enhancing India's glory in the US through their talent, hard work, and dedication. You are the real strength of our relationship. I thank President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden for the honor you've been given today. I think I can't thank him enough for this.
Friends, भारत और अमेरिका दोनों के समाज और व्यवस्थाएं
लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों पर आधारित है। दोनों देशों के संविधान, उसके पहले 3 शब्द, और जैसा राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन ने अभी जिसका उल्लेख किया, वी द पीपल, हम दोनों देश अपनी विविधता पर गर्व करते हैं। हम सर्वजन हिताय सर्वजन सुखाय इस मूलभूत सिद्धांत में विश्वास रखते हैं।
The societies and institutions of both India and the US are based on democratic values. The constitutions of both countries begin with the following 3 words: we, the people, as President Biden just mentioned. Both of our countries take pride in their diversity. Both of us believe in the fundamental principle of in the interest of all, for the welfare of all.
पोस्ट कोविड काल में वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर एक नया रूप ले रहा है। इस कालखंड में भारत और अमेरिका की मित्रता पूरे विश्व के सामर्थ्य को बढ़ाने में पूरक होगी। ग्लोबल गुड के लिए वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए दोनों देश साथ मिलकर काम करने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है। हमारी मजबूत स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप डेमोक्रेसी की ताकत का स्पष्ट प्रमाण है।
In the post-COVID era, the world order is taking a new shape. In this time period, the friendship between India and the US will be instrumental in enhancing the strength of the whole world. The two countries are committed to work together for the global good and for global peace, stability and prosperity. Our strong strategic partnership is a clear proof of the power of democracy.
Friends, अब से कुछ ही देर में राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन और मैं भारत अमेरिका संबंधों और अन्य क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर विस्तार से बातचीत करेंगे। मुझे विश्वास है कि हमेशा की तरह आज भी हमारी बातचीत बहुत सकारात्मक और उपयोगी रहेगी। आज दोपहर को मुझे यूएस कांग्रेस को एक बार फिर से संबोधित करने का अवसर मिलेगा। इस सम्मान के लिए मैं आपका हृदय से आभारी हूं।
Friends, in a short while from now, President Biden and I will discuss India-US relations and various regional and global issues. I'm sure that, as always, our conversation today will be very positive and useful. This afternoon, I will also have an opportunity to address the US Congress for a second time. I am deeply grateful for this honor.
मैं यही कामना करता हूं और 140 करोड़ भारतवासी भी यही कामना करते हैं कि भारत का तिरंगा और अमेरिका का स्टार एंड स्ट्राइप हमेशा नई ऊंचाइयां छूते रहे। राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन, डॉक्टर जिल बाइडेन, एक बार फिर आपके स्नेह भरे निमंत्रण के लिए, आपके गर्मजोशी भरे स्वागत और आतिथ्य सत्कार के लिए मैं आपका और 140 करोड़ हिंदुस्तान वासियों की तरफ से आभार प्रकट करता हूं। जय हिंद। गॉड ब्लेस अमेरिका। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
I wish for, and the 1.4 billion people of India wish with me, for India's tricolour and America's stars and stripes to always keep flying higher and higher. President Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, once again, I thank you for your kind invitation, for your warm welcome and hospitality, also on behalf of 1.4 billion people of India. Jai Hind, God bless America. Thank you very much.
I was going and meeting the people.
Right, the function here is underway in the White House. You just heard the speeches there, both by President Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Guests, Ambassador Timothy Roma, former U.S. Ambassador to India, John Chambers, U.S. ISPF Chairman, former Executive Chairman, CEO, Cisco Systems, and we are also being joined by Umesh Sachdev, co-founder of Unifor. Ambassador Roma, coming first to you, sir. What do you make of the speeches? What was the underlying thrust of the speeches of both President Biden and Prime Minister Modi? They spoke about tech partnership, why it's important, secure and trusted tech partnership. They spoke about the Indian-American community and also about the Quad. President Biden said it's bent the arc of history. Which point do you believe was the most significant in their speeches?
Well, nice to be with you, and I'm very excited to see these two speeches by Mr. Modi and President Biden, and go to the White House State Dinner tonight to celebrate this partnership between two great democracies. I think we're not overstating this by using words like a watershed visit, historic cooperation, and a springboard of deliverables to partner on security, defense, energy, space, and computer issues for a decade or decades to come. There was not just one thing to point out here. It is the friendship, the trust, the partnership, whether that's talking about the Quad and the deepening of the strategic cooperation and convergence there. It's the way we see China together. Both countries see China and some of its aggressiveness and its foreign policy as a threat to prosperity and world peace. We see cooperation on technology in the same ways, whether that's wireless, whether that's space cooperation, whether that is a new chip plant that may be going into Gujarat at $2.7 billion. We see cooperation on technology as a way to work on climate change and energy independence. So that's key. We also see friendship and partnership and trust as key issues. We can talk about anything when we have a reservoir full of unprecedented trust in this relationship, as Prime Minister Modi talked about in a Wall Street Journal interview the other day. When that trust is at high levels, we can talk about historic agreements, springboards to new kinds of cooperation and technology, but we can also talk about things that we might find sensitive in this relationship. I'm sure Mr. Modi is going to bring up the withdrawal from Afghanistan as an issue. He may discuss Pakistan as an issue. Also, President Biden will certainly talk about the Ukraine war and oil issues, and he might bring up the issues of democracy and human rights. So when friends have this kind of trusted relationship, they can really talk about anything.
Now to John Chambers as well. John Chambers, what we heard both sides talk about also dwelled upon tech partnership,
dwelled upon tech partnership, secure open tech partnership. Do you think in the context of China, this becomes very vital for both India and America?
Well, I think it's even broader than that when you look at it, Maha. I think this is what President Biden worded as the most defining strategic relationship for the 21st century. That is a huge statement. And the major purpose of this visit is to bring our countries closer together, to allow America to see Prime Minister Modi for the wonderful, brilliant leader that he is, and the strategic partner to the U.S. For President Biden to say, here's how both countries really benefit from the overall approach. So we said this 5 years ago, interestingly enough, at Gujarat with the prime minister there, that the U.S.-India relationship would emerge the most strategic relationship in the world, that India would be the fastest growing economy in the world, that the U.S. and India together could innovate at a pace that others could not, and would be models for others to follow. And I think when you listen to Prime Minister Modi's comments about global good, peace, and prosperity, I think this is coming true. but realize this was also on the foundation that has been built by the cabinets from both sides over the last year, the finance ministers, the defense ministers, the Secretary of State, etc. So I think it is a defining moment in the relationship for us to get to know India even closer. I love India. As you know, I'm the biggest bull on India, the most optimistic about India's future and the importance of the partnership with the U.S., but also a huge believer in the vision of Prime Minister Modi and the future of India and how important the U.S. and India together can benefit every citizen and every one of our countries and every one of our states. So I think the message today was spectacular. I do think it's a watershed moment, as Tim said in terms of his comments, but I think you're just beginning to realize what is capable out of this long-term partnership strategicness that goes way beyond trade, way beyond just great contracts and working relationships with GE or with Boeing or with Apple. It goes to how we innovate together, how we generate jobs together, and what your other guests will be talking about, how we do startups together, where our countries work together for to be the best innovators in the world, where you have the best engineers in India, graduating 1 million a year, and the best startups in the US in terms of Silicon Valley and beyond. And we combine those strengths and we will innovate, not just in critical infrastructure or emerging technologies such as AI, but well beyond it. So I think it is a huge moment, a huge inflection point in time, and one that I'm very excited to see. But it will define the future, I think, not just of our two great countries, but candidly of the world in terms of a model for the future.
Okay. All right. Umesh Sachdev, I want you to particularly talk about the Indian-American community that has been alluded to by both the sides, how important and significant it has been, how it has grown and contributed to the American society as well.
Maha, this is truly an important occasion for the Indian-American community today with Prime Minister Modi's visit. Not only are these two the biggest democracies of the world, these are the two biggest innovation economies of the world. The relationship between Silicon Valley and India has been extremely strong. The Indian-American community's contribution to the tech innovation economy of Silicon Valley is truly profound. So look at some of the largest CEOs, the latest startups, the number of unicorns. India today has the third highest unicorns in the world. And every single unicorn coming out of India, which is focused on business-to-business environment, finds North America and the United States as one of their biggest market. Similarly, every large unicorn in US, which is looking to build a global business, finds engineering talent and India as a key market, etc. So the ties between the technology ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem, the startup ecosystem are truly at a place and a pace that no two countries in the world today can define. And today, Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US, his focus on technology transfer, technology partnership between the two countries is further going to cement the role that Indian Americans are playing in the tech innovation ecosystem and startups in the United States.
Ambassador Roma, coming to the issue of people-to-people contact, as far as H-1B visas are concerned, or visas in general are concerned, it's been a niggling point between the two sides. We understand that today there could be some big announcement on H-1B visas that can be renewed now in the US and the person doesn't have to go back to it. A very big step, yes. At least in easing out the situation for professionals.
Well, I know that this is a very, very big issue for the United States and a very big issue for the people of India. Again, this is talking about our people-to-people ties. The fact that Mr. Modi and President Biden both talked about our Constitution starting with the sacred words, "We the people." The people of India, the people of the United States run the government, not the other way around, or kings or monarchs or dictators. The people are in charge. And the people have been telling our leadership in Congress and Parliament and so forth that we want to expedite these travels between our two countries. We have 4.5 million Indian Americans living in the United States. We not only have a very, very close community in the business environment, in the startup environment, in the unicorn environment, but in our political environment. Both Democrat and Republican presidents believe strongly in the strategic convergence of the United States and India. And I know BJP and Congress party officials also believe in this relationship. We have people in Congress, not just the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, that believes and works on this relationship. One of the most important committees in the United States Congress is the Select Committee on China. One of the most important people on that committee is my friend Raja Krishnamurthy, an Indian American from Illinois, who is the ranking member on that committee and helping us put forward policy on China. So throughout our society, from business to politics to society, we need to be able to expedite travel between our two countries. And especially it's in the interest of the United States to bring over and keep potentially brain gain. That means Indians who come to the United States, study here, get PhDs. Not only are they job makers, they're job multipliers. They help us start new businesses and employ Americans across the board in our communities by creating startup jobs and big companies. And hundreds of Americans, therefore, have jobs when we can have a smart, safe, secure immigration and visa policy. I know the new ambassador, Eric Garcetti, has been working hard to do this since he got over to New Delhi. It's a priority for Mr. Biden and the State Department. And I understand there are going to be some announcements on how to improve, expedite, and make sure that that renewal process takes place in a quick and efficient fashion.
दुनिया में कुछ लोग
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity, because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV,
because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, Building a Blueprint for Climate Action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
Because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, Building a Blueprint for Climate Action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
Because the only side we're on is yours.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. and it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
that informs,
inspires,
and illuminates. Watch every...
Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV. I'm Gargi Rawat, and let's get to the latest on the Prime Minister's state visit in the United States. And now the real important part of that visit has begun. It's the day 2 of the state visit, and the Prime Minister was welcomed at the White House with a 19-gun salute. There was also the playing of the national anthem of both countries. And welcoming the Prime Minister, President Joe Biden said, "We spent a lot of time together since the time I was Vice President, and since I became President, we established a relationship based on trust. Given the situation of the world, it's essential that India and US work together." So that was the opening remarks of President Joe Biden. Remember, yesterday as well, the President did meet Prime Minister Modi. He was welcomed at the White House by the First Lady and the President, and there was a private dinner then. But today is when the real working part of the trip begins, and the bilateral between the Prime Minister and President Joe Biden has begun. After that, the Prime Minister, they will be addressing the media, and there will also be a press conference. 2 questions, we believe, will be asked, one by an Indian reporter, one by an American reporter. Then the Prime Minister will be addressing a joint sitting of the Congress, and that's a rare honor, and this is the second time he will be doing so. And after that, we'll have a grand state dinner in the White House. So that is what the plan is for today. In fact, very interestingly, NDTV's Maha, who is there in the US, has also told us that perhaps on the 3rd day of the Prime Minister's visit in Washington, that perhaps there may even be another meeting between the President and the Prime Minister. Now, already, remember, there have been several big announcements. Mega deals are on the cards, and we've been reporting that all day and bringing you all the highlights. Big ticket announcements, which are range from a defense cooperation to space expedition. That's very interesting. A signing of an agreement between ISRO and NASA, and possibly an Indian astronaut to be sent to the International Space Station. So that's something to look forward to. And several deals to really strengthen the ties between the 2 countries. As we said, after the bilateral talks, which will now be taking place, these visuals of the hug earlier on as the Prime Minister was received at the White House. And the Prime Minister, as we said, will address a joint sitting of the 2 houses of the US Congress, and then the dinner. So let's talk about some of the deals that have taken place, the announcements that have been made. General Electric's aerospace arm has announced that it has teamed up with the state-owned Hindustan Aeronautics Limited to make fighter jet engines for the Indian Air Force in India. So that is a very key aspect of India's Make in India push that we've had. Also, Micron Technology, a prominent American chip maker, has been invited by the Prime Minister to set up an assembly plant in Gujarat. So that is also something that is very, very key. And remember, the chips are used in all aspects of our everyday life. So to have a plant set up in India is a vacuum that we realized, especially during the COVID times when there was a shortage. So this has been something that has gotten a great push. So Micron Technology to set up a base in India, an assembly plant in Gujarat. Also very welcome for the NRIs, for Indians who are working there in the United States, India and the US. Again, we've heard from sources, is all set to announce changes in the visa processing for H-1B visas, and also opening up of new consulates. So that's a big step up in diplomatic ties. And finally, Bengaluru will get its own US consulate. Imagine India's Silicon City. It had no US consulate till now, so that's on the cards. Also in Ahmedabad is what we're hearing, and India will set up a consulate in Seattle, so that will help in terms of Alaska as well, as a lot of interests are there. So those are some of the key announcements that are expected, as we said. And there you can see the inside pictures as the Prime Minister and President Joe Biden are sitting together ahead of the bilateral talks. All right, so Prime Minister Modi and Joe Biden, they're sitting. We're seeing if we can get any audio there, but that is the meeting that's taking place inside the White House, or the bilateral taking place.
White House में दोनों देशों के राष्ट्राध्यक्ष, इस वक्त आप देख सकते हैं दृश्य हम आपको दिखा रहे हैं कि राष्ट्रपति जो बाइडेन और प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी, जिनके बीच इस वक्त वार्ता जारी है, और जैसा प्रधानमंत्री ने भी कहा कि विभिन्न आपसी, द्विपक्षीय, क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर दोनों नेता आपस में बातचीत करेंगे, चर्चा करेंगे, और उसके बाद क्या कुछ निकलकर सामने आ रहा है वो एक संयुक्त साझा बयान में हमारे सामने होगा.
व्हाइट हाउस के
Prime Minister Modi and President Joe Biden, and that's the very key sort of walking on the side there, and with the pillars of the White House on the side. That's a very characteristic visual or picture from the White House. And now to have the Prime Minister and President Joe Biden walking there is an interesting photo op. And not that he hasn't visited before, but earlier on the Prime Minister also spoke about how the White House has opened its gates for so many
We're seeing our major defense partnership now a pillar in the Pacific security. We're seeing our growing cooperation with a whole range of issues. We're seeing our economic ties and technology, inclusive economic growth for our people. We're seeing our growing cooperation with a whole range of 20 this year. Space, focusing on emerging technologies, clean energy, global infrastructure. I look forward to discussing how we can strengthen our partnership 20 this year, build a future together worthy challenges and build our people one grounded on democracy, human rights,
और अधिक बेहतर एक ऐसा भविष्य जो लोकतंत्र, मानवाधिकारों, स्वतंत्रता और नियमों पर आधारित.
Welcome again, Mr. Prime Minister. We have a big agenda.
आज मैं आपके साथ चर्चा करने को देख रहा हूँ जिस तरह से हम आपकी और अपनी सरकार की सहभागिता को और एक बार फिर से और एक साथ मिलकर एक ऐसा भविष्य तैयार करें जो हमारे लोगों के लिए और अधिक बेहतर हो. एक ऐसा भविष्य जो लोकतंत्र, मानवाधिकारों, स्वतंत्रता और नियमों पर आधारित हो.
So welcome again, Mr. Prime Minister. We have a big agenda to continue to build our progress. Again, step by step, continue to build.
तो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी एक बार फिर से आपका
coming in. Okay. Well, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for being here. Welcome back to the White House.
प्रधानमंत्री जी आपका यहाँ पर स्वागत है फिर से आपने हमें आपको दिया धन्यवाद.
Almost exactly.
That is inside the White House as President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi, begin their bilateral talks. And this is a photo op really for the media there. But to talk more about the Prime Minister's visit and the significance of this visit, we're now joined by Dr. Tara Kartha, a former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, and Daniel Markey, a Senior Advisor, South Asia, USIP, and Senior Fellow at FBI SAIS. Thank you so much both for joining us. us. And Dr. Tara Kartha, first to you, a very, very significant visit, which also shows India's importance to the US, given, the manner of this visit, the red carpet that's been rolled out, the manner in which the Prime Minister has been welcomed, and all the sort of statements coming out of the White House ahead of this visit.
Yes, I know. It's actually personally also quite a huge victory for all of us, because all of this was being put together at the NSCS, as you know. The whole ICT was being put together from there. So I'm so happy to see that. I mean, this is tremendous, right? I have never in all my years in government service seen a visit as heavily uploaded as this one. This has got so many deliverables across the board. In, like you said just now, in space, in terms of the engine technology, in terms basically of the enormous goodwill, at least from India. There is huge goodwill, which, let me tell you, was not the case earlier. At least 10 years ago, there was so much suspicion of the United States, which is not there now. I mean, every person wants to send his child across. Second thing is, you should remember, this is a kind of uploading since 95, 2015, the defense framework. Everything was going so slowly, both sides were trying to work things out, and suddenly we have this huge upsurge. So I think it's a huge initiative by the President Biden, I think, who has thrust this forward. It's something which really the most significant partnership which we are seeing for us in a decade. This is a huge thing. So it's
right, Dr. Kartha.